Okay. We're going to go ahead and begin this meeting. This is the regularly scheduled City Council meeting of City of Glenwood Springs. It is September 5th, 2024. I welcome you all that are here in person and online. We'll go ahead and do a roll call.
Mayor Wusso.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Dame. Councilor Gertis. Here. Councilor Zelinski. Councilor Weimer. Here. Councilor Kaup. Councilor Schachter. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Any agenda items or changes? I see none, so we'll move on. Council announcements. Any upcoming events we want to do a shout out for? Councilor Kaup.
I do not have any upcoming events, but I do have an announcement that I'd like to make this evening.
Please do.
I will be resigning my at-large council seat for city council effective on October 16th of 2024. So my final city council meeting will be October 3rd. So the first meeting in October. It's just, I feel that the time has come for me to focus on other aspects of my life and areas of service and move on to some new adventures. But I'd like to just say to my fellow council members that it's been my highest honor, and also to staff and leadership. It's been my highest honor and pleasure to work alongside all of you. And working in community service and serving the city for the last 7.5 years and over 11 years in total. So, but I have so much confidence in city's leadership, council, and the staff as you move forward. So look forward and working with you for another month.
Shelley, you will be
On
missed.
to new adventures.
Yeah, but we wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. And with that in mind, as long as everyone is good, we'll go ahead and put a work session item on the next regularly scheduled council meeting to just determine how to move forward with Shelley's vacancy. So, Councilor Schachter.
2 announcements. I think our Brianna has posted these, but I want to remind everybody the last Tuesday market is next week, and there will be a special outdoor community picnic, as well as other information and a film. So just want to spread the word that the market can use our support and the community support. Thank you. And then the other one that we've mentioned before is on September 12th, our emergency preparedness and planning open house or community meeting. So those are 2 important events. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Any additional items for this section? Okay, I'm going to close the council announcements then. I'm going to open up citizens appearing before council. As a reminder, this is for items not on this evening's agenda. If you want to come up to the podium and take 3 minutes, I believe Lori Chase is on our list this evening. Come on up. Much.
Hello, Lori Chase, 705 Cowden Drive, and thank you so much. And I want to thank Shelley for all your service to this community. Thank you so much. Gonna miss you. And what I really came up here to say is that I wrote a letter to Chief Darris and to Ingrid and to, Madam Mayor, and to somebody else, Sumner. And I always felt that action speaks much louder than words. And I've noticed a stepped up police presence on Grand Avenue, Glen Avenue. And today I saw an officer parked over there by the church over by Red Mountain Drive. So I want to say thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Lori. Appreciate it. Any additional people here this evening? This is for items not on this evening's agenda. Come on up, Paula.
I'm Paula Stepp. I live in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and I'm on Middle Colorado Watershed Council. I'm also on the River Commission here for the city.
Yeah, okay.
And I have many nonprofit affiliates in the Valley, and I'm affiliated with the city, and the fact that I'm on the River Commission. Anyways, long story short, September 15th is Latino Fest in Two Rivers Park, and I just want to make sure to bring that to the public's attention.
Perfect.
Activities are from 2:30 to 6:30. Number of people are going to be out there celebrating and inviting our Hispanic community to enjoy and conserve the outdoors with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Anyone else here? And as a reminder, we do not take public comment online. So I do see some hands raised, but we do not, as a practice, if you want to make public comment for items that are not on the agenda, you do need to be here in person. So, but all the other agenda items for this evening, we will take public comment. So we'll close the section then for public comment, bring it back to council. Any responses to public comments? Okay. I'll bring it back to council then for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Counselor Kell.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And item number 13, we're moving right along. We'll start with Middle Colorado Watershed Council update of 2024 collaborative projects and funding request. I believe that Paula Stepp is here.
Thank you, Council. I'm Paula Stepp. I'm with the Middle Colorado Watershed Council, which is a nonprofit that works with stakeholders to take care of the watershed from Glenwood Canyon all the way to DeBeck. With me tonight is Christina Pearson. She's with SGM, and she has been our consultant and technical supporter for some of the projects, and she's going to be explaining some of the information towards the end of the presentation. And also with me is Board President Doug Winter. And I will get this yet. Soon. Share. This one? Just that one?
Sure.
Great.
Just double click your item.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate the help. Is it just an arrow key, right?
Arrow or.
That works. The clicker, got it. Middle Colorado Watershed Council has been in this area since 2009, when stakeholders got together from along the river corridor and said we need to protect and enhance and evaluate our watershed, and what are the projects that we need to do to protect that. Some of the projects that came as a result of a recent IWNP, which is an integrated water management plan, are already funded, and I'm going to talk about a few of those quickly. Some of these listed here were funded by other sources than the Colorado Water Conservation Board funding those IWNP projects. We also had Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, Colorado River District, various communities. So we have a number of different sources that we go to, including foundations and donors that help us out. One of the reasons that we'd like to present tonight, and we'll get back to it later, is looking at maybe returning Middle Colorado Watershed Council to a possible budget line item like we were when we first initiated, in the sense that we work with every community on the river. And as with other regional groups, that helps us to do cross-jurisdictional work and work on projects that don't necessarily end at boundaries. Currently, what we'll discuss later is our Colorado River Wildfire Collaborative. You are part of two collaboratives. You are part of the Roaring Fork Collaborative and the Colorado River Collaborative. You're on an MOU, and like us, you're on a boundary corner part. MCWC is also part of both those collaboratives. We recently completed a wildfire ready action plan, and we're going to discuss what we have seen in some of the drainages that we have done a risk analysis for, with some help from Christina. Other things that we work on, right now I'm working with the Forest Service. Well, I'll go through this as we go. How's that? One of the things I did want to do because I'm going to discuss these. Two versions of our native fish reporting.
Thank you, Paula.
And what we did is worked with CPW. We have some problems in our watershed with non-native species, particularly predatory fish species that eat or hybrid with some of our native or regular trout species. And those need to be reported to CPW. So we worked with CPW to be the interlink between this reporting app, people coming to us, and us going to CPW. And what has recently come to our attention, which has been discussed with both the River Commission and with the Parks and Rec Commission, is the presence now in Colorado, on the Colorado River, of the zebra mussel veligers. They've only been discovered down in the Cameo area. CPW is testing further upstream, but really what we're looking at is how to stall that from moving upstream as much as we can. And one of the recent things that I've talked to the Parks and Rec Director, Rod, about is maybe getting some cleaning stations at Two Rivers Park or Veltis Park where anglers are getting in and out of the water so they can wash their boots off before they go to another water source. And it's really preventative public outreach now. That's the big thing, is get the messages out, clean your boat, clean your shoes, that type of stuff. This reporting app really is probably more particular to the fish species because you're not likely to see little things out there in the water, but you never know. You might see something else. You might see some on a boat or something like that. Make sure to tell people. The other thing we're doing is working with the Forest Service right now. We're still working post Grizzly Creek fire. I know it seems like, wow, that was 4 years ago. That was 4 years ago. But we're still seeing impacts from it. And one of the projects that we are working with the Forest Service on is replacing some signage in the canyon and telling the story of the Grizzly Creek fire and what that meant for the community, what that meant for CDOT, what that meant for CPW, just the whole array of stakeholders that were involved, what that meant for the city of Glenwood. So we have designated certain locations in the canyon where we are helping the Forest Service through support and funding, replace those signs and add signs on the rec path at the trailheads at Grizzly Creek and No Name and at the two boat ramp areas. We'll not only tell the story of the fire, but we'll also update some information on being a recreationalist in the river. CPW will have their fish regulation signs. We will talk as far as safety with our recreation rafting community and that type of thing. We went through 3 phases. One was design the first year. You think you're going to do these in 6 months. First year ended up being design. The second year ended up being, the first year ended up being planning. The second year ended up being design. And now we're into year 2, 3, and 4 for installation because everybody has other projects going on. The other big thing that we're working on right now that is wrapping up, that I will probably be bringing to your P&Z boards and stuff, is gravel pit restoration. What we were looking for is best practices, not only for gravel pits that are asking for permits now that you might make a comment on as a city council or a planning and zoning or city manager, if you see those come from the county and they're in the area. But also, what about old gravel pits that could be refurbished? So we worked with LOTIC to kind of go through and talk through what the best practices are, keeping in mind that this is a needed resource. We can't build without gravel pits. So we realize that, but we can plan for when those gravel pits are done and what is the best resource as far as making them a viable place for riparian habitat and wetlands and animal species interaction, that type of stuff. We know you can't do 100%, but we can do pieces and bits. And like I said, we can go back and restore areas that were old gravel pits that sometimes you might not even realize were an old gravel pit. The idea is to adopt these contemporary practices and look at and work with our gravel pit operators on what can we do if they're applying for a permit, what things can we suggest that they think of now, because it's best to do it beforehand, but also what can they do if they're at the point of shutting down the gravel pit operations and ready for the next stage. As I mentioned earlier, we're still on the tail end of post Grizzly Creek fire water quality monitoring and rain gauges. The discussion right now is we started with 7 rain gauges in Glenwood Canyon to track weather coming in those different drainages. It's different. If it's at Coffee Pot, you're going to get different weather than you're going to get at Windy Point. We've talked to NOAA, we've talked to CDOT, who is also retaining a couple of their rain gauges. And the question is and has been brought to our attention is, can we keep 2 of those? And so I've looked for pricing, and right now USGS, who gave us those rain gauges, didn't give us, we paid for those, put those rain gauges and soil moisture monitoring in place, said we could keep it at 2 locations in the canyon at about 10,000 each, depending on how we get the grant funding and that type of stuff. So we are asking CDOT if they want to contribute. We're bringing it to your attention because you are most impacted by canyon closures and that type of stuff, and looking at, can we find some small matches to get 1 or 2 of those locations to continue for another year or 2. We're also looking at water quality monitoring still. The downstream communities have been mostly impacted on Colorado River water quality changes. Obviously, the city of Glenwood went through they went through more than anybody as far as having to update their water treatment plant in the intake. But those rain gauges could make a difference just for warning on what might be coming down No Name Creek or Grizzly Creek, which feeds our water. Then, because of our participation with the wildfire, post-wildfire work, we were instrumental in not only being some of the initiating stakeholders at the Roaring Fork Collaborative, but also starting to work on the Roaring Fork and bringing stakeholders together to build a collaborative there. Again, that's a cross-jurisdictional, bring as many players to the table as you can to say, what can we do to be ready for the next wildfire? Because we know it's going to come. And what things can we do mitigation wise, both for being ready for wildfire and being ready for post wildfire. Currently, that collaborative, which we've been pushing along and supporting for the last 2 years, needs to hire a coordinator that will do this kind of management, apply for grants, set up community outreach programs similar to what Roaring Fork Collaborative is doing. And I have to tell you, all of these collaboratives are a collaborative. They work together monthly, meet monthly. What are you doing? What are you doing? So we can all help push each other along on making this public outreach be successful in fighting wildfire. We realize that there is a CWPP by the county. Some of the towns have it, some of the fire districts, and those community, sorry, CWPP. Thank you. Those really kind of, and Christina will get to this in just a bit, but what those are is more pre-fire, what can you do to dampen the impact of a wildfire, you know, prescribed burns, mastication, that type of thing. What areas need to have that done? But what we also worked on was the funding that we got to do the WRAP, which is the Wildfire Ready Action Plan. And that one looks at what happens after the fire burns. And we know well in Glenwood what happens after the fire burns. We've seen it in our canyon. We've seen it on Red Mountain, the flooding that happened a couple of years ago that my understanding might have been a result of fire long ago. So we know that fire isn't the last story. So we are doing this risk analysis. And the reason I am having Christina present to you where we're at with this, because in the position you are, between the 2 collaboratives, you really do need to look at what will that mean for Glenwood for the next wildfire. I've lived here long enough to have seen Coal Seam. I saw Storm King. I feel like I've seen fires further down valley. I've had a long history here, not as long as Ingrid, who, well, actually probably the same because you're so much younger than me. But, but the idea is we know wildfire is going to happen and we know what happens afterwards. So Christina's going to share what this WRAP looks like and what it means for post-fire so that you can see if you want to invest a match to get a similar WRAP done if you're not able to be added to the Roaring Fork one.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Christina Pearson. I work for SGM. I'm a water resources engineer. I have been consulting with Middle Colorado on the post Grizzly Creek and post Pine Gulch Fire water quality monitoring program. And then I've been working with Middle Colorado, through Middle Colorado with the Colorado River Wildfire Collaborative. There's lots of acronyms on this wildfire ready watersheds program that the CWCB is helping fund. This basically is a graphic for how they're doing wildfire ready action plans. And it starts off with getting stakeholders involved, then going into getting a lot of GIS information for all the values at risk in particular watersheds, moving into then doing hazard evaluations for 4 different types of hazards in post-fire environment. That's debris flows, flooding after fire, fluvial hazard zone, which doesn't actually change after a fire, but it's very important to know because if you aren't aware, fluvial hazard zone is basically the zone that a creek or a river can move within, any type of waterway, because they're very much living beings are waterways. And so trying to identify where they can move. And why that's important after fire is that when you have these flooding events, it's more likely you can see a creek or a river move more quickly than it would have pre-fire. So that's why that's one of the hazards we're looking at. And then the final one being sediment transport, since that's pretty impactful to not only scouring, but also, of course, like water treatment and any type of agricultural, anybody who's diverting water off the river, as well as environmental impacts to that. Okay, so one of the things that we do, we grabbed all this GIS information about, and blue here would be kind of your values at risk. Because they're looking at all of your ecosystems, environmental systems, your reservoirs and dams, agricultural and municipal infrastructure, roadway crossings, of course, life and property we're very concerned about. And then on the red, here is the different types of hazards analyses we were looking at. So like Paula mentioned, CWPPs are around, they're great. They're wonderful plans that are out there. As she mentioned, they're really focused on wildfire, they're focused on prevention, and then they're also focused on mitigation during a fire. So they really kind of lay out how you'll warn the public, how to get people out of the way and whatnot. They focus heavily on the wildland urban interface, the WUI, and they do a lot of project mitigation, fire mitigation project identification. Our RAP, as Paula mentioned, I've just told you, it's about post-fire. And what it is looking at is an entire watershed. So it doesn't necessarily just look at what's close to where people live and what's close to infrastructure, but the whole watershed particularly, because that impacts what comes downstream. So you do need to know what's going on in the whole watershed. And then we're looking at post-fire hazard mitigation. And we do also identify some overlap with CWPP, would be some pre-fire mitigation, because it does make an impact if you do prescribe burning or chemical and mechanical treatment to a landscape. It can impact how the soils recover after the fire, which then impacts sediment transport and flooding. Okay, so this is kind of a slide that just kind of goes over some of the projects that could be identified. And these are things, some of them are things that can be done pre-fire, and not what I just mentioned, but also if you're looking at infrastructure updates, if it's something that can be identified in our RAP, it gives you another reason to look at that infrastructure update. So maybe you're looking at culverts that need to be replaced because they're at end of life. Well, maybe this is a culvert you should consider being upgraded for a larger size event, because if a fire happens above that culvert, maybe this is something you're pretty concerned about. Same thing with bridges, similar things with, well, you guys have all done, you've been, City of Glenwood has done major improvements to the water treatment plant, but other municipalities and other water treatment operators would be concerned about possible updates to their systems as well. And one of the ones I do want to point out, especially because Middle Colorado is here tonight, is to talk about stream restoration projects, because getting your floodplains reconnected to your waterways is a great way to help mitigate post-fire impacts. It gives you a place to not only slow down a flood that's coming downstream, but also to settle out some sediment and really help the ecosystem, help any downstream communities protect from these post-fire hazards. Okay, this is, I'm not able to share the live tool that's going on, but this is a way to, a tool we've created to help disseminate the very large amount of data that we've put together for the Colorado River Wildfire Collaborative. If you think about it, we've taken all of their values at risk, all of their culverts, all of their bridges, all of the buildings, what else am I'm missing so many things there. And we put all of the water rights, all the intakes, anything that comes off of the creeks and the creeks in that area, and put them into GIS. And then we've overlaid those with our hazard analyses and made what's called a susceptibility analysis. And that looks at giving a susceptibility score for each of the hazards to every single value at risk that could be impacted. And we're using that for is then help come up with some project identification in the RAP reporting itself. And why that's important is because if you can have your project identified in the plan like this, it helps you go for grant funding. And that's one thing that we find very important with this. And I think this is something you all should be thinking about as the Roaring Fork Collaborative goes for their RAP, which is starting soon. This is something that could help the city of Glenwood Springs look at other projects that might be adjacent. For example, anything that you're doing along the river corridors, any type of riparian planning that's going on, that might be something that could be informed by the RAP as well, or could be supplemented by this RAP. So this is the study area real quick that we've selected for the Colorado River Wildfire Collaborative. The Elk Creek is in blue, Rifle Creek watershed is in purple, and then what we're calling the Battlement Mesa area watersheds is in red, and that kind of stretches from Rifle to DeBeck. This tool, what we would be able to do when you get into it, you can actually zoom in on each section. And so this is the debris flow hazard, and you can see in the shaded areas, this is all of Elk Creek. Green would be one that has a slightly increased hazard to debris flow, and then orange, and as you get to red, those are some drainages that would be much more likely to have debris flows that happen. And then although there's little dots that are really hard for you to see at this distance, but the dots are all these values at risk, and they're colored according to their susceptibility to this specific hazard. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. This is in East Elk Creek, and I've zoomed in. This is for a presentation I did with the town of Newcastle to look at 2 orange triangles on this image. And you'd be able to click on this and see what those are, but those are the intake for the town of Newcastle's water treatment plant, their primary intake, and then a settling pond that they have that allows them, when they have higher turbidity in their water, to settle out some of the sediment. They're both identified as values at risk that are highly susceptible to debris flow. So they've been identified in this RAP, and what we're looking at where that goes from there is it helps them identify items they could do ahead of time and things they should be prepared to do if a fire happens in the Elk Creek watershed, specifically in East Elk Creek. So we're looking at, as you all are aware of, debris flow berms that help redirect debris flows away from that, possibly armoring their intakes, and then doing some stream restoration upstream where feasible to help settle out and slow down any type of debris flow events that might come down Elk Creek itself rather than from the hillsides on either side. Similar thing, this is the flooding hazard, and this is at the bottom of East Elk Creek down in the town of Newcastle area. There's some turquoise color here, and that is I want to say the 25, no, this is the 2 or 5 year, it might be the 5-year hazard increase for flooding. And this blue here is their 25-year storm event that could happen post-fire. And so it shows more flooding than would perhaps see otherwise. And it as identifying some buildings that are going to see deeper flooding events that happen, and then also some that will see some flooding, but they're kind of showed in green, which I feel like is misleading just because green seems good to me, but green is like under a foot. So it's a small amount, but it's still not insignificant. And again, it just helps us identify some projects that the town of Newcastle should be aware of. So these are things that you could look out for in a RAP and why it's really can be beneficial. And then along with this goes a nice long report. That is what we're finishing out right now. And that is specifically identifying projects in each section of a reach of the creek.
So our intent. Want to join me, Doug?
Oh, yeah.
So the intent for showing you the RAP is because I know that the Roaring Fork Collaborative is doing this now, and it's just something to consider. How do you get Glenwood involved and protect this town as well with that kind of information? And as Christina said, planning grants, which is essentially what this is,
Mhm.
leads to project grants. And that will be our next step, is telling people what they can do into the future. I'll let you take a few minutes.
Yeah, hi, everybody. This is Doug Winter, Glenwood resident, and I just wanted to say thank you to the city of Glenwood for your support over many years for Middle Colorado Watershed Council, and to go through a couple of the activities that we have that are outside of these major grant-funded projects. By and large, what we do are these grant-funded sort of science-based activities up and down the Middle Colorado watershed from Glenwood Canyon to Debet Canyon. But we have a couple of things in the city of Glenwood that we've been doing for a long time. We work with the River Commission routinely, both on project things and for awesome events like Riverfest. Had a great Riverfest this year again. And, we have a variety of events throughout the year. We have our annual film festival that's coming up in September. We anticipate selling out the vaudeville again. Had another sold out vaudeville show talk this past winter, with music and storytelling and a lot of fun stuff. And that's, a fun thing to do in Glenwood. And we also have outreach and education activities. I actually got involved in Middle Colorado Watershed Council in 2017 doing water sampling with the middle schoolers on Mitchell Creek. And it is an interesting activity, taking water samples with middle schoolers, but it's something that we've been able to establish a data record that the state uses to monitor changes, or actually lack of changes, in Mitchell Creek. So that's another non-grant thing that we do within the city of Glenwood. And although most of our funding comes from grants, those things outside of grants rely on a steady stream of support from the municipalities and from the county and from our other funders. And back to Paula's point about funding, I think we'd like to be listed as a line item because that provides us greater certainty for planning those sorts of things year after year. Certainly, we've been very successful getting money from the FAB grant, and we thank the committee for that, certainly. But we'd really like to be considered a line item due to our partnership relationship with the city of Glenwood. So again, I'll ask for $7,500 for this coming year for a line item for Middle Colorado Watershed Council. And thank you all again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, does anybody have any questions? No questions? Yeah, totally. And as a reminder, Steve, I believe that FAB gave them, I wrote it down, 3,000. You guys made a request for 9,000 last year, I think, and FAB granted 3 of that.
Yeah, and excuse me, I think they asked for 7,500. This year, $9,000 this year. They got 7,500 the last couple of years.
Okay.
The fact that they got cut is not an indication that FAB thinks that
Yeah.
they're not doing everything they should be doing. We just
Yeah.
had way more
So many requests. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And thank you for planting that seed of your request. I will open this up to public comment and see if anybody either here in person or online would like to speak or have any comments, questions, etc. Okay, so I don't see anyone here. And I cannot see if we have any participants online. If you could open up the participant panel so that I may see if we have anybody with their hand raised. Okay, doesn't look like it. So, okay, I'm gonna bring it back to council. I don't know. I think that if someone would like to make a motion, I'm happy and receptive to that. The other option is that we can put it into our city manager's just purview and we can see if it's feasible. So we got some Counselor Cap.
Oh, did I beat?
No,
Counselor Coe?
you were first, you were second.
Okay, I just had a question on the recommendation on the wrap and just that study, and I'd be interested to have staff take a look at that and give us a recommendation back. If
That's great.
that's,
Yeah.
council's interested.
That's great.
Just to be clear, this is a
Come on up, otherwise it can't be recorded.
sorry
Thank
about
you,
that.
Paula.
Roaring Fork Collaborative has the funding to do the wrap on the Roaring Fork Valley that Glenwood would be a part of. So,
Would be a part of it.
right, if you could, and it probably would take some additional funding to add the Colorado River corridor
Mhm.
part of it. I believe it goes all the way down through the Roaring Fork for that analysis right now.
Really quickly, Paula, while I have you up there, a lot of this that my understanding is that it gives some forecasting. So in the event that this, this could happen, for helping us make decisions. So if we could go back in time 5 years and say forecasting for our watershed,
Right.
no name would have been deemed kind of vulnerable in some of the intake areas. And we could have said, gosh, maybe we need to bolster some of those XYZ. Am I picking up what you guys are
That's
laying
exactly
down?
what you're
Okay,
saying. What's
okay.
gonna happen on Mitchell Creek? What
Yep.
happens if it burns above
Yeah.
Oasis Creek? What
Uh-huh.
happens in South Canyon?
Okay.
That type of thing. Yeah,
And
you just
so-
want to kind of know, and then what's
Yep.
at risk
Okay,
locally.
perfect. So we know where to allocate resources. Okay, Counselor Gotis.
Yeah, I mean, I think I really appreciate the work you guys do. Yeah, I also work with QQ. It's a statewide water quality program. I think my struggle is as an annual budget contribution line item, it kind of goes around what we've been trying to do with the Financial Advisory Board recommendations. And so I think this is the perfect time to ask for it. But I think that once an application's put in and Financial Advisory Board is weighed in for any group to come and say, they didn't give us enough, I'd like to get a little bit more, kind of does a disservice to those recommendations. I'm fully supportive of the 7,500. I just don't know how to square that and how to do that without opening up a door where any organization can come in when they didn't get the amount that they wanted. But so if there's a way to do that, and maybe the way to do it is just make Steve do the hard work and say, Steve, just your discretion. But I don't think this council should take action on that request.
Thank you for that feedback. Sumner, Counselor Schechter.
May I have a question and a comment?
Absolutely.
Question, can you disclose other communities that have honored you with a line item on their budget?
Oh, back up to the podium. Maybe just hang out there for a little.
Yes, we do have other communities on the river corridor. We have Newcastle, we have Silt. We are approaching Rifle with a similar request to move it back to a line item. And we have Parachute considering this year as well to make it a line item. And DeBeck's not in our county, but they are also considering this. And
Newcastle and Silt has put it in as a line item?
we have been getting it as line items from Newcastle and Silt for a few years now. And yeah, they kind of work their budget and they know, and it's all related to the project we do in these areas as well.
Thank you. Now my comment. The work is good, worthy and important. I'm kind of in line with Commissioner Gotis though at this point, unless Fab and our manager says this is a must. I hate to go around it. I hate to put a line item on our general fund at this time without a strong recommendation rather than an appeal to us. So I'm in limbo right now. I probably would not approve it at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. I think that in this situation too, I'm actually hearing kind of two different requests. One is a request for line item for, maybe miscellaneous support for the organization. I'm also hearing the offer of services and a service that could create this tool. And so I think that right now it's a little premature for us to maybe make a decision on either. I'm hearing some feedback that everybody kind of wants to dig in a little bit more, also get feedback from our city manager, potentially from Fab. I think it's also important to say that, we have staff that should also look into the value of these services and see where we're at and if it's in alignment. So, but I do really thank you guys for coming this evening and all that you do for the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to share what we do. It's important to take care of our watershed, and I'm
Yeah.
glad that you guys are a part of this and support us.
Thank you. It's nice to see you, Paula. Nice to see you. Okay. Item number 14, this is resolution 2024-28, setting changes to municipal charter, Article 2, Section 2.3, ballot language.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The last council meeting or work session, I can't remember which, we had a discussion about a couple of different potential charter changes.
Mhm.
The only one you guys wanted to potentially consider placing on the ballot for this November was changing the regular municipal election from April of odd years to November of even years, which would coincide with both presidential and then congressional elections in November. Because of the way that cycle works, the first election that would apply to would be in November of 2026. So it would cut short in two different cycles. It would, kind of cut terms to 3.5 years for currently sitting council members, and then those that would be elected at the April 2025 election. You have the language in front of you. I will say that today is literally the 11th hour for us because we have to submit ballot language and also translated ballot language to the clerk no later than tomorrow. It's sort of related to the next item regarding kind of other charter changes that you guys might want to consider and the methods for doing that. With that, we're happy to do whatever council would like, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think what I'd like to do is we'll go ahead and do a round of questions. I don't want to go too far down if there's not a strong desire to do it. So I as much as I want to hear everybody's questions before we get into, a philosophical debate about the value of it, I'd like to see if we've got kind of a hard line of interest. So I'll go ahead and take a couple questions and then see where the vibe is going. So Counselor Schechter. Okay. Any questions? Counselor Dem.
Thank you. I'll ask a quick question, and I think we covered this last time at the workshop. Given item 15 coming up, possible charter amendments, is it possible that once we go through some of that amendment process, that we may have to reverse this decision?
I think there is a possibility, or it could be modified. I know that we've had some, discussions around whether or not you would have an elected mayor. That may impact terms, wouldn't necessarily impact the date of the election. If you were going to go to an instant runoff, that may be easier to administer in an April election than a November. And that just has to do with us doing coordinated elections and what Garfield County's machines are capable of doing. There's not a comment on whether that's a good or a bad idea. It's just pragmatic.
But it could be a possibility.
It could be a possibility. So I'd leave that to you guys. Like I said, I think by and large that this would be something probably you wouldn't have to reverse unless you did some of those other things. We would need to change this language again if we were going to go with an elected mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Godus.
Just logistically, Carl, or Ryan, how would, if we were to, and I'm not even talking about this runoff voting, but if we wanted to do that, how would that be more difficult or less difficult in an April municipal election than a November municipal election?
I think the real issue, and Ryan can probably speak to this too, is because they count all the ballots together in the November election, nobody else is doing that. And so the machines are not set up to handle that process for just our ballots to get through an entire election. I think if I got that right, Ryan.
Yeah, basically we'd have to do a hand count or we'd have to buy our own machine. So we wouldn't be able to do it in one night. We'd have to do our hand. So
It's okay. Let me get to this. Would a condition exist that it's the same condition, exactly what you're saying, the whole thing you're about to say, that's the same thing that is applicable in April as it would be November for a hypothetical, correct?
It is. We would need to mail out separate ballots.
Okay, that's fine. So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole at all. I just think that if, to Marco's question, whether we do it in April or November, if we do these other changes, it's going to be the same amount of work. Okay. Right?
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
that's fair.
Okay, perfect. I think so. What I'm looking for is just some interest specifically on this as far as whether or not anybody wants to pursue this. So, Counselor Godus.
Just to get the conversation started, I'll make a motion to advance resolution 2024-28, setting the ballot language to move the municipal elections from April to November.
Okay, it looks like motion died for lack of a second. Thanks for trying, to get that conversation going. So I think we have kind of some direction for you, and that is that while this is the 11th hour, there's not an interest. And I'm also hearing that it's not so much a lack of interest, but rather with other nuances like this next agenda item, maybe that needs to be vetted and explored more thoroughly by a larger audience. I see you're still lit.
Yeah, I just had a comment.
Okay, Counselor
Like
Schechter.
a second, I reviewed the
Whoops.
minutes.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Yep, sorry, I did just turn them off. That was me.
You know, when I saw this on, I reviewed the minutes again. It was my understanding that this was gonna come back to us for consideration, but not necessarily for a decision on such a short leash. And we were gonna anecdotally share whether we had support this in the community, which I have. But I would agree that it's probably tied to the next
Mhm.
agenda item and maybe the ad hoc process,
Yeah,
but anyway,
perfect. Okay.
that's why.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that's why I made the motion to try to get out there, because I did want to hear people's response.
yeah.
And so if people didn't hear that this was a problem or an issue, obviously there would have been a second. So I'm not opposed.
Great. Before we move on, I am going to open it to public comment and see if anybody would like to come up and speak on this. Doesn't look like we have anyone, so I'll close public comment. And I think we've given you the direction you need.
Yep.
So thank you. Okay, we will move on to item number 15, charter amendment process. Carl,
Okay.
will you give us an overview, just what options exist?
Yeah,
What- yeah,
absolutely.
okay,
I,
thank you.
I gave you a lengthy memo that I know you guys all used instead of Ambien this week. On
Didn't- It made me not envy your law school years. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's really two in a big picture, we have been discussing how best to review the charter and then how to advance that review and what next steps would be. And really underneath the statutes, there are really kind of two processes to go through. One is a very formal process. If you were thinking we're going to completely rewrite the charter and put it up for election again. And the first step in that process is creating a charter commission. And when you do that, it is actually, that commission is elective.
Mhm.
People are elected to that in a formal election. So there would be two questions on the ballot. One would be whether or not to form a charter commission. And the next one would then be who would be on that charter commission. And that can range in a variety of number of people that could be on, depending on what you all decided you wanted to do. So that's, and then that charter commission would come together, decide on who was going to be their chair, decide on some, rules of procedure. They would go through the process of crafting an updated charter and then delivering it back to you to be put on the ballot to
Mhm.
vote on that entire change. Very intensive process, relatively, it's both intensive and very formal. The other way to do it is the way we have changed the charter on a more of an ad hoc basis over the years, is you tweak a provision here, you tweak a provision there. You're not wholesale repealing and replacing the charter with an entirely new document. And I think one of the things that came out of the discussion at the staff level and with a couple of the, with the mayor and the mayor pro tem, as we were thinking about, kind of the options moving forward, is maybe a first step is to really evaluate what we think might need change, like a little bit of issue identification. And so to that extent, rather than pulling in a huge group of people, our thought was, let's put together a small ad hoc committee, probably with Steve, myself, Ryan as the city clerk, and maybe 4 members of the public to sit down and really kind of go through the charter and issue identify what it is that might need a deeper dive or might be worth considering changing. I think we could do that relatively quickly compared to a much larger process, even on an ad hoc basis of pulling in 10 or 15 members of the community and trying to kind of organize that and keep it moving forward. I think this would be much more of just issue identification.
Mhm.
And that would give us a better idea of whether the charter as a whole needs to be replaced or whether there are a series of changes that might make sense to, say, get on the ballot in April of 2025. Things like, I do think a lot of people are interested in seeing that elections shifted back to November to increase voter participation. But there are also questions that we've talked a lot about, elected mayor. There are questions about, everything from, is the limitation on bonds at 25 years. Does that make sense in today's market? Because that's not a number that, is really in the bond market. It's 20 or 30 or 40. Does it, just things like that we might want to clean up. So with that, that's kind of our recommendation, and I'm open to questions.
I'm going to jump in first with questions and ask you that if we do the first and do the more formal change, then we put it on a ballot in its entirety. And it's either yes, it gets adopted, or no, the changes fail, correct?
Right. Yep.
Okay, but if we do it this second route, the latter, we could say these are 6 items that this subgroup decided were all important enough to discuss. Each item would have its own place on a ballot.
We could do it either way. You could do it
Okay.
as a group of changes, or you could do it as individual ones.
Yeah,
I think, those that were so interrelated, they needed to go together. I'd probably suggest would go together, but if we're talking about a date of an election and then how we do finance.
yeah,
Those two I probably wouldn't suggest would
Exactly.
be together.
sure. Like maybe it's a question about elected mayor, and then the next question is about changing the timing of the elections.
Right.
Simply because I guess the rationale for why I would probably support the latter is simply because of that ability to really focus and not have the populace be like, what are we even looking at? So I'm going to take more questions. Counselor Zelinski.
With either process, the entire charter will be examined, correct?
Absolutely.
So I think that's an important distinction, which is why I kind of leaning more towards the second one, because it's a little bit less onerous, because I don't know that our charter is so flawed that it needs a complete wipe. It just needs some zhuzhing. So I think that seems like a much more sensible.
Counselor Schachter.
The question procedurally is a motion required in this item to proceed a certain route?
I think if you guys want to proceed with something, absolutely. If you don't feel like proceeding with any of those, you certainly don't need to.
Make a motion whenever you're ready, Madam Mayor.
Okay, let's go ahead and get through the rest of the questions. Counselor Gotis.
Well, I think we're on to comments since we've already had 2 comments already. So I guess I'll just throw my comment, but, and I'll just make the motion that we move forward with the second of those. The 4 people that was suggested to go through and make recommendations
Ad hoc.
ad hoc. And I'll have a comment after a second, possibly.
I would say.
Well, you two getting along tonight. It's great.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah,
The only comment I would say is, I think if we do if we were to do the whole big thing, people are going to find a reason. If we have like 20 different changes, somebody's going to focus on, well, 25 years. They're trying to pull the wool over, and they will vote against it. If somebody does not like the idea of November election, they will vote against it. So I think like a slate of like election changes, like I think mayor, state, runoff, that makes sense on one ballot. I think that the next one is bond and financing, but like taking these in bite-sized chunks over the next couple of years is more digestible to the public than a huge rewrite that you would actually have to read a 100-page document to process.
so I don't think we're discussing that though. Like, I think that would be something that the group
Right.
would maybe make a recommendation on timing and such, but what I think we're trying to discern is there support for the first option, which is a, fully holistic review and replace and supersede, right? Yeah. Okay, so I have a motion. I have a second. Do I have any clarifying questions? Okay, we do. Okay, so Counselor Dunn.
Thank you. Just real quick, I was more interested in the timeline. If between one and the 2, I know you said one is lengthy, the other one could potentially be lengthy as well. I mean, this is nothing we're gonna do this year, right?
The recommendation in my memo was an initial review, 7 people, the 3 of us, because we're all kind of like in the midst of it. And 4 members of the public. I think we could get that done before Christmas, post budget. I mean, it's really a couple-week process for us to sit
Okay.
down, everybody to read through, have a meeting or 2, and then come back with a recommendation.
Versus the first option would take us into next year.
The first option, you would probably put that on your regular municipal calendar, your municipal election in April, because I don't want to see us have to spend money on another special election.
Right.
So, we're well into 25.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
All right. Thank you.
perfect. Thank you. Counselor Weimer.
Carl, how would these 4 members of the public be selected?
I was hoping that would be something that maybe you guys post or as part of the motion would want to talk about. We could leave it to the city manager to select some people, or we could ask for some application. We could do it a lot of different ways. And honestly, I like the idea of pulling in some members of the public. I mean, the three of us could also sit down and make that first pass as well. It's kind of up to you guys.
I'm gonna just jump in with my own personal preference and say that I think 4 is actually a little lean. I actually think that 6 is probably a better number, and that makes a group of 9. I think that's a pretty under 10, over 8 kind of thing. And I think that what would be nice is a nomination. So if there are community members that want to nominate people, and then we'll draw some names out of a hat kind of thing, if there's more than a certain amount. I'd like to hear feedback from everybody on that idea, though. Counselor Godus.
I'm okay with 3 or 4 members of the public. I would suggest that because they've already demonstrated some level of service to the community, that we would just initially, I mean, we can open it, we can put an ad in the paper, and if anybody wants to, that's great. But I think we should recruit from this committee, members, present or former members of our current board and commissions. They have a good understanding. They have shown a willingness to contribute. I think that's a good recruiting ground. So I would suggest that.
Counselor Schechter.
Well, I would concur again with Counselor Godus. I would say, and the mayor, to say, look, it could be 4, 2, 6, and let the 3 staff members decide. And I like the idea of kind of picking from commission members from different commissions
Great.
and come up with this to expedite the process, not to circumvent the public.
Great, perfect. Counselor Zelinski.
Yeah, that was definitely something that I wanted to clarify too. I like the idea of bringing it up to boards and commissions. I don't necessarily want to exclude if there was somebody from the public that was passionate. So I would want to make sure that that was maybe it was presented to boards and commissions, but also presented to the public. And then if there is, for some reason, overwhelming response, then, we can decide how we, kind of pick and choose between that. But I think it's really important that we do open it up to the public as well.
Counselor Schechter.
I would just say it'd be my preference that the process does not come back to us. That we've set some parameters and we want this to happen. Let them pick if they're if there's an overwhelming number, pick from that. If there's a sparse number, pick from that. But I'm not feeling the need to come back to us.
I think that for the respect that I would hope the community would hear and feel in the desire to do some of these updates, they recognize we're not trying to have any, nefarious intent. Simply, we're saying there are things about the charter that came from the 1960s that we feel like are not timely and that need to be addressed. And that we would trust staff and community members to make some really good recommendations to us on, and then they'll hit the ballot. So, Counselor Dem.
So you made the motion, and you seconded. You mentioned 6 members. You mentioned 3 to 4. Do we need to specify how many?
So we need to clean up that motion.
We
is
need
what
to clean that
do.
up. I guess
So
that's where I'm
if
getting.
You can take this and throw it. You guys are just BFF in it tonight. So if the 2 of you can just dial it in, that'd be awesome. Okay, I know.
You didn't second my motion earlier, so we still got beef for summer. I would make an amendment that no less than 3, no more than 6 members of the public, to be determined by our city manager.
And drawn within the boards and commissions initially.
No, I'm gonna leave that out of the motion. I'm gonna make that as I'm gonna leave that as a
Okay.
suggestion.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have a motion. Ryan, do you feel comfortable with the extent of the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you have a motion amended. We have a second amended. We'll go ahead and call the question.
Sorry, I feel I have to do this because I tell you guys all the time. Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, great. Let's call that question. Thank you. Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Is it problematic at all to have an even number?
No, I mean, this is
Okay.
an advisory group.
Okay,
And
perfect.
we'll
So
just
I just wanted to
make
make
Steve
sure.
deal with it.
Okay. No, okay. Ryan, go ahead. Thank you.
It's unanimous. It passes.
Well, I look forward to seeing what that group comes to us with.
Yeah.
And I thank you three in advance for the energy invested. So thank you. Make sure you feed pizza on the nights that you guys all get together. Pizza. He's like, I thought we were gonna, yeah. I'm just saying feeding. Yeah. Okay, Ryan, project updates. And before we start, I just want to confirm, are you going to give us an update on Southbridge?
I will.
Okay, because I've got Meryl, who always joins us with that. So she wanted to know.
All right, Brian. I guess I have to do this, right?
Go up there. Just go share.
How do I make this big? It's not one thing, it's another. Maybe this thing. How do I make it big, Ryan? Did obviously know all this. It's terrible. In the beginning. There we go. Hey. All right. Madam Mayor, City Council, good evening. Ryan Gordon, your city engineer. I'm here to give kind of an overview of all of our infrastructure projects going on in the city. Our map that I presented earlier, this was updated earlier and provided to the Post Independent, but I thought it was a great example and exhibit to sort of talk on. So I'll talk about all the ones that are done so far. So A-line break outside of West First Street has been completed and totally done, including from the city property through the CDOT property in the median. So all of our A-line breaks, both West Glenwood and Glenwood proper, are done and ready to be used in the event of emergency. What else do we have done? I do have some of those. So the Riverview Drive Stormwater project has been completed, and I actually have some pictures, hopefully, that are intended to be really cool and demonstrate what we've done. Although we'll see how much they come through as that interesting. However, the Riverview project, stormwater project, has been complete and has been revegetated. I actually have a great photo of that to show grass coming up, some trees planted, looks really nice. Pump station 11,000. We have been in operation now for 2 full weeks. So this is again a wastewater pump station. We are putting sort of the nice, pretty pictures on it, so to speak. We have landscaping going in and cleaning up. So that is progressing really well. Our water pump station up in Oasis Creek is nearing completion. So we're just kind of doing the last bit of installation of instrumentation and controls. But again, that one is nearly done. And then sort of our other big ones, so to speak. I guess the last one, Devereaux Bridge has been complete for a little bit, but just to recap something that happened earlier this year that was done before the 4th of July weekend. So our other bigger projects that are going on, I'll touch on 6th Street to start with, in no particular order. So we started that project about 3 weeks ago. Really, the message on that is we're doing all the underground work as much as we can this year. And then next year will be all the surface improvements, including North Landing. As we sort of expected with this part of Glenwood, 6th Street was the old Highway 82. We kind of thought it was a quasi archaeological dig, and it turns out to be. Day 1 of digging, we found the old Highway 82, which is a 10-inch thick concrete road. Day 1, dug down, said, holy camoli, we have to deal with this. So we saw cut through the darn thing. So anyway, one of a couple other things. We saw an abandoned gas line. We saw a weird water line. So we knew we were going to run into this stuff, but we're dealing with it. In progress, it's a work in progress. Certainly traffic control is something that we're constantly trying to adjust with. We're having regular meetings every other week with the business owners, getting a lot of good feedback from them. And we're hopefully taking what they have to give us and modifying and changing things to try to make it as painless as possible. Certainly we're digging underground, which requires more traffic control and barricades and whatnot, but I think we're working through some of those issues. Other project that we have going on in downtown, so the alleyway. So the alleyway behind the Maxwell Anderson and behind Cooper Liquors is our first step. So we're doing the north-south portion of that alleyway. This week, kind of hit a minor milestone is we dug down and exposed all the utilities, and we have flow filled. So that's a low strength concrete, the bottom lift. And for both alleyways, we're doing flow fill in the bottom and then concrete on top, predominantly to get a nice good surface, but also because we don't want to vibrate the ground. Some of those buildings are older and don't have real foundations, so we don't want to cause any extra issues. One thing we ran into Block 45 that we have been addressing, Black Hills Energy has an old gas line, a very old thin steel gas line that they have replaced. So as we've tried to do with all of our projects, whenever we can upgrade, update utilities, whether they're the city of Glenwood's or otherwise, we are doing that. So moving right along. We are looking for alleyways project, at least Block 45 again, which is behind the Maxwell Anderson, to be complete mid-October. That whole area being done. So making significant progress, and it's going to look great here. And I got a few photos to kind of show on that. Our Blake Avenue Phase 1 project is cooking along as well. We're probably 50%, maybe a little bit more. We've done all the upgrades in 24th Street. We're doing all the work in Blake from 23rd to 24th, which again was an added portion that we added not too long ago. We are moving along the rest of the way of Blake. We have most of the stormwater system installed. We have formed up and poured most of the sidewalk, most of the curb and gutter in Blake. We are looking to pour the rest of that concrete this week and next week, and perhaps get to asphalt pavement on Blake from 23rd to essentially 26th, or just maybe a shy in front of that to Easy Street, maybe by the end of the next week, certainly the next week after. So making some significant progress. Now we're starting to hit our stride, so to speak, right? When you get up to asphalt, you can kind of really get the nice looking features, the surface features. So really solid progress there. Our 3 Mile Confluence project is moving along very well. In fact, we are, let me go back up to Blake. So still on Blake, right? We're still on budget, on schedule, which means that we still plan to be done with Blake by the end of the construction season. So we're saying end of October, beginning of November. 3 Mile, back to 3 Mile. Complicated project in some regards, but the contractor has done a really good job of really putting in a lot of the rock armament on the bank, done a lot of really good stuff of removing some of the old debris that was there from the Atkinson Ditch Trail. We're looking to do we're adding a little bit here by making some stormwater improvements that we discovered that need to be upgraded. We're still on schedule to be done probably the end of September, the first or second week in October, depending how things work. So again, making really good progress. Removing a lot of invasive species, some of the Russian olives and some other the invasive species that Parks and Rec wants out of there. So again, hopefully we'll be able to turn that back over a little bit sooner than later. Certainly the park that we're using as staging is one thing that at the end of the day, we're going to come back and clean up and make whole again. Our debris flow basin project, again, is coming along fairly well. So basins B through D, which are the western basins. Basin A is the one above of the water plant in Red Mountain, or the nomenclature there. We are about 75 to 90% done on all B through D. The last things left to do really are build the gabion walls, which are a rock wall that holds back debris and lets cleaner water flow through. A lot of work went into these. So Basin C in particular, we exported about 50,000 yards of material. To get a sense, that's about 4,000 to 4,500 truckloads of dirt we pulled out. That's just accumulated dirt from centuries of flows. And Paula made a good point when she was up here. The reason we're doing this, just to remember why we're doing this, is the coal seam fire in 2002, right? So sometimes the effects of the fire are many years after and cause problems down the line. On this one, just to be aware, We have some massive rocks, the size of minibuses and whatnot, that we are going to do some cracking of those boulders tomorrow. So again, we're really chugging along. Basin A above the water plant's a little bit behind. That's gonna carry into next year. Just because of some schedule delays, and we've redid the design in a few aspects. We had some helicopter work that we chose not to do for a variety of reasons. Cost was one, availability of helicopters another. But we did some redesign and dropped the cost of the project about $2.25 million. We are getting money from the NRCS, so I think them and we are all sort of happy about that, to say the least. I would say the result is that we've beefed up some of the safety measures, the debris flow fencing, in order to manage and mitigate some of the things we were limiting by the helicopter work. So let me just zip through a couple of these cool little photos. Again, I think they're cool. We'll see how they are. But just to show, right? So this is Blake Avenue before we started this project, looking down Blake from 23rd. Before. Well, I guess I don't have these. Well, we'll see how they work. I thought I had this worked out. Similar to getting this run, we'll see how my PowerPoint presentation skills happen. So here's another before picture. Again, this is standing on 23rd looking down Blake. Here's after we got brand new asphalt, curb and gutter. Again, it seemed a lot cooler when I was putting this together. I'm not quite so impressed with how it turned out. Pretty cool. Maybe we'll take a field.
We're excited.
We'll do field trips afterwards. Maybe that's the better, right? All right.
Your first picture didn't highlight the potholes and degradation of the before.
That is correct. Well, yeah. So yeah. Well, anyway, you can see my after pictures, a few ones down here on my slide. So again, you know, Councilman Shackner, you're exactly correct. This was a pothole-filled road.
Man.
Here's the picture afterwards. Again, we have curb on the left, and then sidewalk going in on the right. Potholes gone, so we have a nice road base coming down. So we'll take a nice tour afterwards, right? So here's looking down 24th.
Mm-hmm.
Here's looking up 24th. Okay, so you know, substantially improved. Just to remember, for everybody's memory too, this section of town had no stormwater infrastructure at all. So water went where it went, which tends to be in people's backyards. Alleyways. So this is looking from the Maxwell Anderson behind the vehicle up the alleyway. Here them putting in flow fill. Again, we're in the middle of construction, so it's not yet complete. But again, putting down that first layer of flow fill to get a nice surface on that alleyway. Debris flow basins. So this is basin B, kind of before, and they're just starting. And here's what it looks like afterwards. So again, these basins, right, we're making a big depression to capture that water. We'll continue. So basin C, this is the big one. Kind of before and after. Again, it's hard to kind of get a sense for how big it is, but you know, quite a change. Basin D looking from across the river. And here's looking back down with some berms and some catchment basements. Here's maybe the coup de grace, we'll say, I guess, I don't know. Riverview Storm looking at the existing Atkinson ditch. And here's what it turned out to be. So very nice. We have nice, you know, landscaped area back to normal. And I don't have a before picture, but here's 3 Mile Creek now. What you're looking at now is a lot of armament, and it looks like a lot of small rocks, but we have 3 to 4 foot boulders buried underneath to provide that resistance to any high flows in the Roaring Fork River. So that's kind of the end of our, let's say, our infrastructure projects and my South Bridge update. So South Bridge update, not a whole lot more to talk about than last time. And Meryl, I got one update for you. We have started the work on the EA and those documents. We're looking to have, so the consultant has a date in spring of 25 to get all of that wrapped up. We're having a meeting to figure out, can we make that a little bit quicker? Why is it, you know, that long out there? So again, we are proceeding with it. Part of that is to give a lot of traffic data that we have compiled here at the city. So that's going to go to Jacobs, our consultant, to do that work. And we do have some information from FHWA and CDOT that our grant agreement and advanced construction letter seems to be done, and it's literally just getting the ink to dry. I think I've said a
Nice.
variation of this theme several times, and so this is hopefully the last one of those updates, but progress is being made. We are looking to have an updated construction set from Jacob's next milestone sometime in late October. And then we'll really kind of hit the gas and really get going. So that is my update on all the infrastructure projects in Glenwood. Any questions, comments from council?
Counselor Gotis, beat yes. Counselor Gotis beat you. Yeah.
Hey, short timer. I got the mic. Can you go back, Brian? Is it possible to go back to that Riverview Drive slide?
Perhaps.
If it's too much.
No, it is not. Here's the finished or the before or after. Oh, reshare screen. Oh my gosh. Counselor Glodis, I will get there.
It's okay. It's probably not super
No,
important.
I got it. I'm on it now, man. I am.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah. So who owns all that irrigated turf? Is that us?
that's the city.
Mhm.
Why did we do that? I mean, why are we planting non-functional Kentucky bluegrass in areas that, you know, why don't we have native grasses or something else, even if it's
That's a very fair comment. So this actually is native grasses. It looks like
Okay.
Kentucky bluegrass. This is relatively new installed. And so as it's coming up, the irrigation that you see, it's kind of hard to tell, but it is on the surface. So this is temporary irrigation until we have it established.
so we're not going to be irrigating this in the future?
Not forever. No, once a couple years to get it established.
Yeah.
And then we're going to pull up the irrigation and it's going to be
Oh,
a
man.
thriving natural grassed area.
That-
I love that.
Good
Thank
comment.
you.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Okay, Counselor Kelp.
Just a quick question, Ryan, on the, from standing in North Glenwood, you can see a big excavation behind the wastewater treatment plant, I think. Is that part of one of these basins?
It is, yeah. So the
Okay.
big one that you see, Counselor Kaup, is called Basin C.
That is.
Above it. Yeah, that's the biggest one. That's the one that we pulled out about 50,000 yards and about 5,000 yards of rock.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. Thanks.
Yep.
Any additional questions from council? Okay, we'll take some questions for people online. We'll go ahead and allow, I know Meryl is going to, she had her hand up, so let's get back to that screen. Here we go. Okay. Meryl, I think we'll go ahead and get you started. If you can get your speaker on, get going. Okay, we can hear you.
Okay, okay, how do I share a screen? Can I share?
I have no idea. I don't know that you can because of, yeah.
Oh, okay, well, I should have showed up. All right, let's see. Okay, so I am really happy to hear that we're moving along with this project. It's very important. And I'm glad that over the past few months, you've heard my pleas. I really do believe that there is going to be a lot of traffic. And I've looked at the data that was presented at the Carter Plan 2 meeting with the city. The only problem I had with it was, yes, traffic went down, traffic miles traveled went down. However, if you read 2 pages further in the Garfield County Comprehensive Plan, it did say that that loss of mileage driven would be counteracted by growth, which is unusually great in Garfield County, and also by our increasing tourists. So I still believe that the original proposals presented and the original numbers presented by, it was SGM and Jacobson and all of those groups, I do believe that they were correct from the beginning. And I'm glad to hear Jacobson is looking at them again. That feels good to me, that it'll be an independent look and that we can see it, because I don't think there's anyone who believes that they're going to go around 27th Street to avoid an evacuation route. So I love Ryan, but I don't agree with that premise. But other than that, I know this is a tough thing to face the public, so I appreciate all this work on it. I did have a slide, and I will send it, of every possible funding source that could be looked at for this project so that we do it robustly, because when I look back at the 27th Street Bridge, there was a meeting on, let's see, I don't have the date, but I can send this slide presentation that I have.
Would you do that? Will you do that, please, Meryl? Send that to us. We would love to have that.
I will. It was,
Okay.
they talked about 27th Street being 5 lanes, 4 to 5 lanes, and they decided that if Southbridge was a given, then they would, they could go proceed with 2 lanes. So that speaks to the fact that ever since the beginning, they've known that Southbridge is not an evacuation route. So I just wanted to say that. And I also wanted to leave you with a quote by someone on the council who was quoted, and I will send that in this PowerPoint, but it's recently Glenwood Springs City Council in a unanimous vote approved making Southbridge a shovel-ready project. It's not just for convenience of up valley traffic. It's not just for wildfire emergency. It's also to accommodate future growth. And this was in 2020. So I just want to,
Thank you.
there you go.
Okay, thanks, Meryl. I appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing that. You can either send it to Ryan, or to me, or to Steve Boyd, and we'll make sure that the remainder of council and staff receives your email, okay?
Okay.
Anybody else online would like to speak on this? Anyone in person? Okay, we're gonna close public comment for the updates. Ryan, do you guys anybody have anything else? Last thoughts, comments? Councilor Dunn.
Thank you. Just real quick, I really appreciate those updates
Mm-hmm.
and the photos and everything. I know you geeked out on it. I loved it. I think it was awesome. So anytime you can put that together, I welcome this very much.
Well, I was considering having a little iPod up here to play some music, some background music, but that was a bridge too far for my ability.
Next
So
time.
maybe next time.
Next
Maybe
time. Thank you, Ryan.
My 10-year-old will help me next time and it'll be a lot better.
That's
Playlist.
perfect, right?
Thank you, Ryan.
I really look forward to seeing the before and afters on the 6 and 24 Head Road. So that one's the one I'm really excited about the slideshow for. So thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you,
Okay,
Council.
have a good night. Okay, traffic speed and counts. We have yet another one of our engineers, Lee Barger.
I'm hoping to find it. Ryan.
Back to Zoom. Thanks for that. Please share here.
See, I made it so easy, the person before can help
That's
the
right.
person after.
All right, we're here. Great. No, it doesn't matter. Madam Mayor, councilors, Lee Barger, transportation engineer, here to talk about or to bring you up to speed on traffic volumes and our data collection effort. We've been ongoing for the last year. So what we have on the right here, you can see this is our inconspicuous counter. We have a couple of them. The city purchased these last year, and we've been going around in different locations throughout the city, putting them out for about a week. So there's one battery in there. It'll last a week, and it'll get us a whole lot of data. And so where are we counting? We're looking at arterial highways, our heavy volume roadways like 8th Street, Midland. We're looking at gateways to the city, 4 Mile Road, County Road 154, things like that are kind of the enter-exit points to our city roadways. And we're looking at our bridges, 8th Street Bridge, 27th Street Bridge, Devereaux.
We also respond to citizen council comments that we hear often, usually about speeding concerns. So we'll go out and take a look once we hear something like that. We also have internal areas of concern, voiced by PD, voiced by Public Works, voiced by engineering, and we'll study those. They also help for project planning. Anytime we want to put in, let's say, a new roundabout or a new intersection of some sort, we need to gather data, and this is our way of doing that, pulling the data together to justify what we're planning on doing. And finally, you heard tonight in the work session, most of you, we won the TDM grant, seeding grant, and so we will be putting a program together here in the next 6 months, and this is a great way of monitoring the success of that program. So what are we getting out of these counters? So we're getting vehicle counts, which is the volume. We're getting the travel speeds. We're getting the direction they're going and the lane that they're in. So these counters can do 2 directions of 2-way, or it can do 2 lanes going in the same direction, like our ramps or Highway 82 Grand Avenue. Also, vehicle classification, really important for pavement design. And sound analysis and other planning of projects. So it's a, telling you how many heavy vehicles, how many, really heavy vehicles you have on the pavement. And so that's another thing we get out of these counters. We don't use that function quite as much, but it's a great tool to have. So where have we counted? We've counted all over. 44 locations. You all know the city very well, the exit 114. We've counted Storm King, Melray. We've counted Soccer Field and Midland on both sides of West Wolfson. We've counted Donegan Road at the east end. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but it is, wherever we feel we need to count, we're going and getting it. It takes an hour to go out and set these things up. We have some on 8th Street here. We've taken School Street, north and south of the school, 8th Street Bridge, Midland. This is probably our highest count location here on Midland, just west of Red Mountain Road. We've collected volumes on 7th Street, 7th under the bridge, 7th under the railroad bridge. These are the ramp volumes, so the eastbound off ramp and the westbound on. Going south, 14th Street to about 29th Street. This is behind City Market. We collected some volumes on Blake and speeds, responding to some concerns in the Palmer neighborhood. We collected this last week. And we have a few counts on South Grand, north and south 27th, north and south of 27th on Midland, and on 27th itself. And finally, south end of town, going down Midland, we have one kind of mid-block, as I say. This is halfway between Hager Lane and Cardiff. So really where people can let it go because the speed, it just feels a little more open out there. We'll talk about that when we look at the speeds directly. And then we have, these counts down here were all taken. You see I've got Southbridge in here, future Southbridge. So we have a few on Airport Road. We have one on 4 Mile Road. And then also these are along County Road 154, which is again, our back way into town, which we're seeing a lot of traffic on now during 27th Street's construction. One count now not on here is the Dry Park Road. That was another gateway. Again, just seeing how many people might be going that way. Another great function of these counters is they don't need to be on a paved road, aside from tubes. So what do we get out of the counter? This is basically what we see when we download our count for the volume. And you see here what location this is. We have the lanes over here. So we have lane 1 is westbound, lane 2 is eastbound. So in this place, lane 2 eastbound would be your inbound volume. So that's inbound in the morning, 7 o'clock. This is on a Thursday. Here is the day before. This is the outbound. You have A lot of people heading out of town in the afternoon, not as many heading into town, but still pretty high. This is where we had our highest location in town, 13,879, which was a average of the weekday traffic, but you see we had a few days above 14,000 this location. I see on the weekend drops down to 9,000, 11,000. Speed, let's get into speeds. This is the final page of a printout of 7 pages of data. So what you see at the bottom is kind of the summary of those 7 pages for this one direction. And this direction is coming into town on 8th Street. So that's just east of the Roaring Fork Bridge over here. And what we found was we have this summarized with 50th percentile speeds, 85th percentile, and 95th percentile speeds. So 85th percentile speed is 85% of the drivers on the road are driving at that speed or below it. And what that says is we're traveling at 28 miles an hour out here. 85% of them are doing that. 50% or less are driving at 24 or less in that location. Who's speeding? We have, how do we define speeding? It's what we say in the engineering department is, around 8 or 9 miles over the posted limit is where the cops are gonna get you, or they might start ticketing you. And so what is that on this table here? Down here at the summary, if we add up these 3 and divide it by 30,526, it's 1.6% of the vehicles are actually going 8 or more over the limit coming into town here. So that's, that is speeding. Is it a problem? Well, that's the question. Now around town, we found, let's see, we had a few locations that were, up to where I can get into these here. Yeah. So what's in orange, is basically areas where we saw things a little high, and we were either addressing that by putting eval signs out, or those thank you signs or slow down signs, or we're letting our PD know and saying, let's enforce a little more out here. So we have a lot of those locations often exist at kind of transition points into town. So like where you're transitioning out of the 35 mile an hour to the 25 mile an hour. And just beyond that, people are still going 35 miles an hour. Up on 6 and 24 coming in toward Traver Trail, 35 to 25, they're still going a little too fast. So, do the signs need to be moved back a little? They're just not quite, matching their speed when they should. But those are locations we're considering putting some of these other signs out at. This is the Midland Airport 4 mile corridor and data set, if you will. I have 50th and 85th percentile speeds on here, dates shown. We can really get into any of this if you want. South Grand, County Road 154, 27th Street area. Again, what shows up here is people heading southbound, again, on kind of the diversion route, trying to avoid the busy traffic on Grand Avenue. And we're seeing some higher speeds there, even in the northbound direction. So it's kind of like they're beating traffic in that afternoon and, trying to get through town as fast as they can. Local roads, this encompasses Cowden, Overland neighborhood, Blake, Pitkin, School Streets, Devereaux, all around. We're trying to get around schools, trying to really, just address traffic anywhere that needs to be looked at. We look at it. So with that in mind, it's an ongoing program. Do you have any questions, any concerns, any locations you want to dive into?
Anybody have any questions?
Anything.
Hey, Lee, you mentioned your notes. I have them right here if you
Okay.
want to take a look.
That's okay.
Counselor Godes.
Yeah, thanks.
So Lee, I think we've talked about this before, but what was the data or the statistics that led you to, or Ryan, to drop the speed limit from 45 miles to 35 miles an hour on, by the rec center?
So the stretch of Midland.
Yeah, like North
Yeah.
Midland.
Well, Yeah, the date, so that came out of Public Works, in terms of we dropped the speed limit for, the construction going on out there. And I have to say that that stretch had a whole range of speeds. People would drive 35, they would drive 55, they would drive all over the map out there. We are really kind of have a focus of trying to lower speed limits in the city on our local streets. And we still consider Midland, even though that's a really busy street, it's still our street. And we don't want to see 45 miles an hour in town. That's generally our feel. The faster you go, the more susceptible you are to getting dangerously hit, not just fender bender. So we're of the impression lower is better. It's better and safer for our kids, for our school children, for anybody that's out there on the street. And so I think we're going to stick with that. Another reason I would say is the south stretch of Midland we talked about, having a little bit higher speeds. You feel like you want to go higher. If we raise that speed limit, what are people going to start doing?
Go higher than that.
You know, they're just going to keep going. And that is really the traditional way in America that we have always done speed studies. Somebody says there's a problem. Let's go to our last slide since we brought it up. On the left is kind of the traditional way. Is there a problem? Yes. Well, let's raise the speed limit. Now, if we want to be safe and ensure the safety of all of our traveling public, we can look at the design of the street instead. If we feel that is not appropriate for, let's say, going by a neighborhood, by a school, any kind of important place we want slower speeds. So I think we like this idea. I think CDOT, we talked to CDOT last week about this, and this is an evolving concept because they were always of the traditional style. We're going to go, capture all your speeds out there, and they're going to show you, we got to raise it to 55 and we got to raise it to 60, and it's a never ending cycle of a way that we don't want to go.
So
The direction we don't want to hit.
when this is pretty clear, but when you are not able to change the street design, such as South Midland, which is just designed and built in the last 5 years,
Right.
Or Midland, there's not that option to change the street design. So we cannot be a strong town approach. And so I guess my question is, I didn't observe people going 55 personally because the road reads as 45, but for 20 years when it was 45, was there a lot of accident data that would point us to a reason to drop it down other than we just want slower limits?
Let me look into that. I don't have that data, but I'm sure it's in one of my binders up there.
Okay.
I can check into that, but I'd like to visit that with you or for you.
Okay.
Later.
Will you go back a couple slides?
Sure.
Thank you.
One more. There we go.
Yep.
Oh, go forward one. There we go. Forward two now. Oh,
Three, four. Sorry,
South.
where it's the graph,
The graph with
the graph with the couple different speeds.
went too far.
yeah. I think it's that one right there.
South
Oh.
Grand.
Yep, slide 10.
Back one.
There's a 3-second delay.
Back one.
Oh,
There we go.
Right there.
Okay. So I'm trying to figure out what stretch Jonathan is talking about, but I think it's one of those that's marked, but Jonathan, I feel like
Midland,
You
we're
were-
talking,
in Iowa during that time. I don't think it was you. I'm teasing about your excessive speeds on Midland. Yeah, okay. Sumner. Counselor Schechter.
Thank
Okay.
you, Lee. I think getting data is so helpful to really look at it. And I would encourage that we keep doing that as patterns change. I personally do not feel we have any obligation to speed traffic through Glenwood. we're cross purposes with CDOT to a degree. Let them go on 82. Anything in the residence that we can do to slow down, I'm for it. I like this chart because it shows us. I have two questions, though. Two things. One, we've heard from example, what I'll call Upper Palmer, and diversion of traffic because of the construction that's going on or anything else that happens. And perhaps the speeds, and you guys reacted very quickly and the neighborhood appreciates it. Thank you, by putting a palliative fix. But one thing the data would help is not just speed, but over time frequency, average daily trips. Because in a residential neighborhood, if there are things that cause it to go up by a third or more, that affects the safety of the whole neighborhood. So that data will be extremely helpful. And maybe there's some yellow flags to look at there over time. And the other one, I guess is it transportation kind of standard that 85% is a better number than 50%? I mean, in terms of traffic calming, control, and residential neighborhoods, how do we wrestle with that one?
That's where we're headed, or at least where the discussion is headed, is looking at the 50th percentile. And that's why I added this column. I had only had the 85th percentile until this last week when we had this discussion with CDOT. And yeah, there's options to using the 50th as a way to be a more conservative, have a slower overall speed. They have a saying in Boulder of 20 is plenty. And that was something I think that was just put out there, and it's resonated, and it works for their town, city streets.
One more thing, if I turned it off.
I don't know, Sumner.
Yeah, sorry. I noticed downstream, or what I guess that's upstream on Blake from 20th to 14th. That's a big stretch. What I'm concerned about there is our school signage is not aggressive enough. We got St. Stephen's, but it's not aggressive signage yet. I think I would encourage that. And the CMC and the mini college qualify as a school zone? That would, I don't know legally, but that would be another one where we have a lot of kids and students that might justify some more aggressive signage as a school zone. Thank you.
Okay. Counselor Cope.
Thanks, Lee. This data is really helpful. And I guess I'm most encouraged by the small amount of yellow that shows up, which I think, if I'm interpreting it right, does that mean there's really not a whole lot?
That's not where they were, 8 or 9 miles over that 85th percentile. So
Okay.
that is what you're seeing, and should be positive.
Okay. Yep. I think it's very helpful data. Do we have any data on Blake close to the hospital in that area?
Closest would be at 15th right
The
here.
15th?
This one.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Which is that wider
Which is
section
that,
of the
and
road. Yeah.
again, 28 miles an hour in the southbound direction
Okay.
was the 85th percentile there.
Okay.
Everything else was below 25.
Yeah, no, this data is great. It's really helpful. And I think we've heard from the public that they appreciate the stepped up police presence in the areas where there is speeding, especially like on Pitkin, around the high school, things like that, just to help give that presence and slow people down a little bit. So.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
I have a question for you. In residential areas, could a community or a street petition or request to their speed limit be lowered?
Yes,
You could.
there's the traffic calming petition. It allows for that to look at speed limits. And so we can do a speed study as part of that.
So I have an HOA meeting on Saturday. Maybe we could connect. Totally self-serving, but also an opportunity, transparently, and also an opportunity to learn, like those in the community, that is an option and it exists. And that, I think the people who the people who live on the street know the street best and they know how it drives because they're always on it. And so, you know, there are times where it's appropriate because of design and all those other variables that, you know, that the general consensus is that it could be lowered. I think it's nice to know that it's a route that's available. So, thank you. Counselor Godus. You
Sounds like,
cannot, hold on, you just can't contest that you're not speeding. You can talk about anything else, but that one you can't talk about. That you like to speed.
oh, I'm not gonna say I like
Okay,
to speed.
good. Okay, cool.
I'm not gonna say I don't like to speed either. I'm going to remain neutral on that subject. So I think, you know, Ingrid, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, you have a very good point that the neighborhood should have a say in it. And, you know, there's recently, I don't know if you, what? Okay, sorry, very distracted me. I think there's something I saw on Facebook the other day about somebody passing in front of our houses on a double yellow. And it's super inappropriate in a residential area. You know, I can't condemn that enough. However, you know, your strong city, strong towns, the way you do it is you redesign a street to make it fit the speed limit you want. When we don't have that option, like a street that's just been designed like South Midland or North Midland, it's just throwing a lower speed limit on creates a lot of frustration. I have been, not myself, but when there's a car in front of me, I'll be very clear here. When there's a car in front of me going like 22 miles an hour, which is just slightly under the speed limit, I have been passed, and so is that car on the double yellow. I mean, we probably, I don't know if you've ever been passed on the double yellow. I have seen it a number of times when people get frustrated by a road that reads 35, but the speed limit is 10 miles under. On North Midland, when the speed limit is 35, that people feel that that road reads 45, people stack up and get on people's bumper and causes frustration. And I'm not talking about the through traffic. I don't care about the through traffic. Is this where we're going to finally disagree?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, fair enough. But
Yeah.
it does feel good vibes. I think we, you know, people are never going to drive 50 miles an hour on Meadow Run or Waltz Avenue or Greenway Drive. Those roads don't read that way. People are going to drive 35 miles on 7th Street because that road was designed at 15, 20 miles an hour. So it just feels contrived to a lot of people when we have a road that reads 35, but they're being asked to go 25. As long as we're okay with not giving tickets and just saying, if you go 35, it feels okay. We're not going to really crack down on people till they go 40. I guess that's fine. But I would say that causes issues as well. I don't think that's the main issue, but on certain stretches of road, I think that is an issue.
Thank you so much for those comments. So, Counselor Schachter.
I love going 25 on Midland.
Yeah.
But really what I want to also say, Lee, this data is so helpful because as you know, I mean, living on Blake, and once upon a time, I almost didn't buy a house on Blake many years ago because I was aware that it was an arterial and busy, but nevertheless, the perception and reality and your data points it are very different. Yes, occasionally a car speeds by, occasionally somebody's revving their engines. And from 6 to 8 and from 4 to 6, it's a little bit busier. But most of the time I could probably sit in the middle of the street and be okay. So this data is extremely helpful and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it helps in the feedback we receive in putting it in perspective because it's real-time data. So, you know, when we're up here so often, I think we're trying to discern what is a true concern that needs and merits attention. And I think this gives us the feedback to say, you know, in some areas, it does warrant attention, but in so many of them, it's not a concern that really rises to the surface. So, Counselor Zelinski.
So I'm going to address the same video that you talked about. That was during school time. It was not somebody there was a very small gap. You asked if I'd ever been passed. The only time I've ever been passed was coming right off the roundabout and I was going up the hill and somebody ripped around me right almost in front of terraces. The people who are speeding are going to speed and they're not changing their speeding because of the posted speed limit. in my opinion. And I think the data proves it. I went back and looked at the slide. And if you look at like most people, the speeds, you don't see like excessively low speeds. I just think that I tend to lean more towards knowing that if you raise it 5 miles an hour and you make it 30, then 35 to 40 is going to be the norm. If you make it 35, then 40 to 45 is going to be the norm. So I feel like with all the neighborhoods right there, with the fact that there's a school and driveways, and there's just such a short, and I went through this with, I think Lee, you were really helpful. I had a resident ask me about, there is a section of that road that is appropriate to move it up to 35, but it's so short that by the time you get there, you're already reducing your speed to get down to the Hager Lane. So I think that we just have to kind of rely on our citizens to use good judgment. And, you know, the posted speed limit, it's a lot, but it's a suggestion. We're not out there monitoring people every minute of every day. But I feel like this data is reassuring because it shows that by and large, for the most part, people are traveling within a reasonable speed, and it's supported by the amount of traffic and the volume. You know, I look at my speedometer, I'm just cruising along with traffic. I'm not really thinking about my speed. I look down and I'm going right around 30, which is pretty consistent. So I feel pretty comfortable with the way that we're handling speed. I know I speed, but like within a reason. I mean, you know, this is what we're talking about. I'm not saying I need to go 40.
I don't know if you guys knew, but we were gonna have Lieutenant Hassel just weigh in on this now.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Just kidding. I think, oh, Counselor Kaup, I'm so sorry.
Thanks. Just one more quick question, Lee. It's been mentioned a couple times that we can't change the design of Midland, but yet I know in some of our discussions talking about Southbridge and the concerns of the residents in South Glenwood about that becoming cut through for commuter traffic. I think, is it out of our purview to do some traffic calming in sections of even the newly built Midland if we needed to keep the speeds at what we want them to be?
It is still
Is that-
possible.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point in terms of why not to change it now
Mhm,
is once Southbridge comes along and people see that's 35, they're gonna feel
Right.
like that is a faster way than the 25 over here.
Right.
So
So-
I think that's a great point of why we keep it there. And also that we can make some changes if we need to, a raised crossing if we need it. We don't need one through there.
Or-
There's nobody on the other side of the street, but
Mhm.
there's other functional ways we could slow things down if we really felt that it was a problem with safety.
Okay. Great.
We really want to slow them down when they get into those neighborhoods. That
Mhm.
extra stretch through there, you know, if we ever have cameras that give you tickets, you know, that
Right.
might be a stretch where
We
they
could make
work.
some money.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Counselor Dunn.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. I thought we approved a couple of cameras that issue tickets.
Yeah, I mean, I would love it. Yeah, you could give an update on that. That would be great.
Because the only way you stop speeding is through somebody's wallet.
John Hessel, the police department. So we did look into mobile camera traffic enforcement. There is a specific Colorado statute that says that third-party vendors cannot receive any type of monies from these tickets. Yet every company that has us, that's exactly what they want. They sell us the equipment or they rent us the equipment, and then they take a portion of each ticket that we write, roughly $15 from every $40 ticket. Because Colorado says you can't do that, as they are the collectors of the money that comes in, you would have to have your own independent accounting system that would do all the billing, do all the collections, chase down any people that won't pay. So at this point, we feel it's not the venture that we can be successful at. Denver, Aurora, I believe, have their own. I know a couple other agencies are trying to do it and they just haven't yet. I don't know if that helps explain it.
Okay, a bunch of questions coming up. Counselor Gotis.
I think Morrison like makes their annual budget on that. So one, I guess my question would be, how do those communities do it and get around the state statute? Number one. Number two, I guess that's illegal. Sorry. Number two, It's like a fee versus a tax. Can we just pay them a flat fee of $10,000 per year per site so that it's not a percentage basis and we get
Yeah.
around that statute?
Yeah, and you mentioned Morrison, they're still trying to deploy that because they're still trying to find a vendor that is willing to do the flat fee. I've chatted with that attorney a couple of times. It's one of the other firms, like mine that does a lot of muni work. Denver and Aurora simply have their own internal accounting departments that do this on a daily basis. And so they just run their own equipment.
So is Morrison in violation of the state statute?
No, unless they figured out a flat fee to be able to do it. They were really struggling trying to land on a contract because really what it is the vendor doesn't know how much they should charge because they don't know what kind of volume is going to be going on. And so that's where you get into this. Yeah, you could do a flat fee, but the vendors, their whole model is built on a percentage. And so it's been really hard to find anybody who's willing to do it on that basis, on just a flat fee.
Yeah.
Counselor Zelinski.
Maybe we can lobby our state as they're collecting our sales tax. They can also use their internal system to collect our traffic violations. You know, I mean, they've got that framework in there. Maybe as we continue to fight these kind of mandates that aren't working for us, maybe there's a way to work with them. I don't know what the process of that looks like, but it seems like there should be a reasonable way to move forward with this, and the barriers in place don't seem sensible to me.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that I do think that potentially is something, it would be interesting to raise that with CML even on a legislative basis to see if we could get some changes made to maybe set a cap on what the percentage is or something like that. I do know, I think the reason the legislature did that, they were trying to find that middle ground between it just becoming, Chicago, where, if your bumper is still, if you've ever been in Chicago, if your bumper is still in the intersection when the light turns red, you get a ticket kind of thing, and trying to avoid that sort of just cash generation motivation.
This is punitive. Any additional questions? Okay, I think we're all set. Thank you both so much. We really appreciate, thank you for answering those. And Lee, thank you so much. I think what you heard from all of us is that this is really valuable. Keep up the good work and we appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to move on to council comments. Quiet bunch. Counselor Schechter.
I would like to mention something in the past and perhaps get council, at least some council support, that by the end of the year, if possible, that we deal with our code of behavior or ethics statement, and we proceed with the evaluations of attorney and manager that we've postponed. We try and we have the documents.
Yep.
That we put that in place perhaps in November, December.
Okay, so I'm gonna respond to that, and that is that one, we have a code of conduct meeting tentatively on November 7th. CML is gonna do the training, and then we'll transition it into whatever, additional work session and direction we want to. And the second is the evaluation. Sorry, it's been a long day. The evaluation is on you and I. That's the last it stood. And so I think you and I need to make a time to get some structure based on the feedback you got us. And so.
Okay.
Yep.
You and I, meaning you, will do it. Oh, no.
You can ask on that if you want. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I think,
Well,
yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna let you jump in first.
Are we looking for a replacement judge municipal? Is that still happening?
Mhm.
We are, the RFP is out currently on that. Judge Maurer is done at the end of the year.
The end of calendar year.
Mhm.
Yes.
And so have we gotten any applications?
We've had a number of applications. We usually don't really get the bulk of them until it's about to
Yeah.
close. So we don't really know what we're gonna get, but we have had.
Great, that's good. Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Counselor Dunn.
Oops, sorry. No, I got it. Just real quick to response to Summers, I would support those efforts, whatever we got to do to get that done before the end of the year.
Okay, great. Counselor Cotis.
Yep, I agree. I think we should have those. I thought we were supposed to be doing those in May. So if we need to delay them, that's fine, but I think we should definitely do those before the end of the year. However, I think that as far as like getting kind of in deep of a code of ethics, 2 to 3 of us are not going to be here like maybe like 90 days after the, at the beginning of the year. So it might be more productive to have it with the new council. I think it's less productive to have it with this council and certainly more productive to have it with the next council, but that's fine. Do you want to respond to that? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Counselor Tucker.
I would respectfully disagree tonight.
Okay.
Because
There we go.
I think the experience of the council is more instrumental in setting the tone for future councils than having 3 new people.
Yeah.
You know what? Then I agree.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
Like Steve Boyd,
Stop.
are vendors supposed to be charging sales tax at the Tuesday market? I've gone 8 times and I think I've only gotten charged sales tax once. No, I specifically ask. And I get somewhere between, yeah, we don't do that, to 2 nights ago, I got we don't charge sale tax if you pay in cash.
Oh. Whoa.
So I'm not gonna rat anybody out because I'm not a narc. I'm just
He
saying
might have been selling.
that is,
Yeah.
I think somewhere between 6 and 8 times I've been there, and I think I've asked that every time. I think only one time they're like, yeah, we have to charge tax in all instances. I think there's only been one time.
And they don't have to be posted the saying like $3, which includes sales
Including
tax, something like
tax.
that.
Nah.
Yeah, they should be charging.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to say is we have a sign code, temporary sign code that is pretty simple and specific, and we used to enforce it, but I guess we don't do it now. And the main things are more than 4 signs per, and I'm talking about temporary signs that we see popping up right now. The main Russ is no more than 4 signs per property, shall not exceed 24 square feet total signage, and shall not exceed a height of 42 inches. And, I'm not looking, I guess I'm looking for some council direction, because I don't think this is a huge issue, but there are probably half a dozen or so examples of people that are just blatantly not doing it. I think, I don't want our code enforcement to get out there with a ruler to go, 42 versus 48 inches, or 24 inches from the public right of way versus 30 inches. I don't want that, but it's pretty blatant violations. It's a pretty simple code. I think that we can do that. You can pretty much see when there's 8 signs, which I see occasionally instead of 4 signs. I can, you can see a 10-foot tall sign. And, I spoke with some of our staff and they're like, yeah, it's just tough because some people are jerks. And I think that's a tough standard of enforcing laws or not. I don't think we should ever give a bare trash ticket, because I guarantee you almost everybody that has that encounter is probably a jerk about it. So I guess, if this is too much hassle, like respectfully, if this is too much trouble to actually enforce our codes and ordinances, what other ones are we not going to do? I would rather get rid of 070, 040 yard signs and prohibited signs section of our code totally, if we're not going to enforce it. Otherwise, what do we have it for? So I think just clear violations. I'm not looking on content or anything like that, but just clear examples of people violating the simple premises.
If I may.
Yeah.
Respectfully, to dig a little bit deeper into the conversation you had with staff, because I have an email from Hannah kind of running down some of that. So I think really what it comes down to at this time of the year, and we've consistently done this since at least 2000, because that's when I started. During the election cycle, we take a very hands-off approach, because this is the quintessential moment of speech, of free speech. And so we tend to focus on keeping the signs out of the right of way, keeping corners safe, focusing on that. I will tell you, and I have an email from Hannah kind of running through, they have found that during election cycles, you may have noticed that it is slightly acrimonious out there. And that regardless of what staff does, it is taken as a political position on, you're telling me to take down my sign because it has somebody's name on it that you don't like. It takes us about 60 days to process those violations because it's not just a really quick, like, take it down and you're done. And so frankly, in the context of it is 63 days to the election, more than likely by the time we process that, the election is going to be over. The other one is that this tends to be used as one neighbor doesn't like the political views of their next door neighbor. Maybe they don't like the size of the sign. They don't like what name is on the sign. And so we get a phone call about it. And so there again, it is used in kind of a retaliatory way. And so we have taken a very hands-off approach to that. Just recognizing there again, these are very, to people, these are very important. They're held beliefs. Certainly whatever council directs us to do, we will do, but recognize that it's going to occupy a fair amount of our time to undertake that enforcement, because I guarantee you it'll be, as soon as you call on your neighbor, that neighbor is going to call on you about something. That's kind of been our approach, is to recognize that election cycles are a little bit different. But there again, if council would like us to strictly enforce and make that the top, one of our top priorities coming out of ComDev, we will absolutely do that. And Hannah's not here, and so that's why she shot me the email to say, make sure council knows that whatever they direct, if that's what their priority is, we'll focus on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Before we get kind of a consensus onto what direction, what we just heard is two sides of it. Let me just get turned on. I think that what we just heard is both sides of the argument. And I would say that is there any vulnerability? I mean, I would hate to have us face a First Amendment lawsuit because we enforced indiscriminately because someone didn't like a neighbor's XYZ.
I think there's always a risk of that. I think
Okay.
there's a higher risk of that during the political
Yeah.
season. I'll be really honest.
Yeah.
I am always hesitant to, sign code enforcement is always tough. There's always a risk around, no, it's really about content.
Yeah.
It's not about size or number of them or things like that. And I do tend to agree with Councilor Geddes that, maybe it'd be better if we didn't have any restrictions at all. If that, certainly all of us that try to enforce sign codes would lean that way just because it's a tough area to enforce in. The biggest thing in this is it puts staff in a really, really hard position. And I will guarantee you guys will hear about it a lot on the dais, in your emails and the letters to the editor and things like that. By way of example, the one time that we took a more aggressive approach, it happened to be, we just had them everywhere in the rights of way, and that's when we really started going after it. And I think the then police chief went out and collected about 100 signs out of the right of way. About 30% were realtor signs, and took them all down. And we heard for 2 weeks that we had, targeted a particular party's signs more than another party's signs. And we just had to hear about that. And so it has always been really hard for us to find that middle ground.
I read recently that Colorado has the most aggressive drivers in the nation. And I'm sure that there, some data that supports that. But I think that as far as enforcement of laws, I don't think we are indiscriminate consistently, but I think there are probably areas such as signs in yards during election season that were a little softer approach. So I prefer to keep you said 070440, is that right? Okay. Keep it in place simply because it gives us some opportunity after election season to remind people, take them down after a certain amount of days, et cetera. I'm comfortable with that, but I don't feel comfortable making any direction or change in how it's currently being managed. Does anybody else have an opinion they want to, something happened to the speakers? Okay, I think they're back up. But anybody else want to comment on John? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So I think it's a little hyperbolic to say we're asking it to be the number one priority of ComDev. I'm not asking that. I simply asked for the most egregious violations and I don't think I'm asking that we take it to the ends of the earth and do 60-day notices. simply going to the offender and saying, hey, this is in violation of our sign code. We would appreciate it if you follow our sign code. That's literally all I'm asking. If we're not going to do that, then I think it's important to just let the community know that it's fair game. 4-way banners, illumination, whatever you want, as long as it's within 90 days of an election. I mean, what are the parameters? Because if we want to go back to that, I see all over this town, still the slow down in town signs that have been up for years now. They're not bad signs. I'm not talking about content, but they've just been up and they're fading and they're all over. I still see 480 Donegan signs. I see signs, the wildfires, and they're not, again, none of these are inherently good or bad. But maybe after this election, we can just kind of do a sweep. And I don't want to offend Diane Reynolds, but if we have these signs that have been up for years now, maybe we should just kind of tell the community, now's the time to collect all the yard signs and just take a break, because they don't mean a whole lot after years of being put up in people's yards. So I guess maybe after, is there council support maybe after the election season to re-examine if we're actually going to enforce this or if we want to strike it? Okay.
Okay, great. Do I have any other council comments? Just as a reminder, I think most of you know, there's a few of us traveling to DC. We hope to, in the next few weeks, we hope to just to have some, good conversation with our state legislators to support Glenwood and some of the initiatives that we're working on. So, any additional comments, questions before we move it over to these guys? Okay. Steve, please.
A couple of quick things. I had a call from Dana at DOLA a little while ago, and he was asking about us being willing to de-obligate the $270,000 grant that we got for a housing study at Vogelar. I said, look, if it's not realistic, you guys are going to do something in the next year or two, let's just de-obligate it. And I thought that probably makes sense if they can use the money somewhere else. So we're going to do that unless I hear differently from you guys. Okay. Let's see. The second thing is Paula Stepp, when she was up here, was mentioning Latino Conservation Week, Sunday, September 15th. I thought you'd be interested to know that Dr. Homer Wilkes, who is USDA's Undersecretary for Natural Resources and Environment, is scheduled to be here and attend. So that's pretty cool. He's kind of a big shot. Last thing is we have a couple of open positions in admin. My old position, COO, we moved to finance and hired an assistant finance director. That still leaves the assistant city manager position open. And I'm going to talk to our senior team and admin and stuff over the next, week or two here, but probably by the next time I see you guys, we'll be out for a deputy city manager or something like that, just so you're not surprised by that. That's it.
Thank you. As the mayor mentioned, we're going to be in DC. Looks like we're going to have a good slate of meetings, ranging from talking about the mine, which still is out there and still is something that we need to finish off, to finance options, some federal programs for Southbridge. So that's all super positive. Also going to be talking, I think, a little bit with our senators about the Shoshone acquisition. So that's all great. In terms of the Shoshone acquisition, we had a late addition to your packet under ingoing and outgoing correspondence, 2 letters, 1 letter of support for that grant application, as well as an acknowledgement of our commitment from Glenwood of the $2 million towards that. I apologize for the late arrival. I just found out about it today. They would like to have that by the 16th of September. So that's ahead of our next meeting, which is why we put them in late. They're both very straightforward, benign letters. So hopefully that's okay to have the mayor sign those and get them out.
They're pretty innocuous and pretty much everything you've all said. The one just says, we strongly support the Colorado River District's efforts. And then the other one says to them that, they have the letter of support for $2 million from us. Do I have, I guess I'll just say all those in favor of submitting those 2 or having me sign those 2? Any opposed to that? Okay, so we'll go ahead and get those executed. Thank you. I think it's council social event time.
given the time, I would say we move it to dock holidays tonight.
Very good. I'll bring it back to council and look for a motion to adjourn.
Don't move.
A second.
We have a motion by Counselor Schachter, a second by Counselor Kaut. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all so much for joining us this evening, and we hope you all have a great Friday. Yeah, so continue to.